All right, welcome back. So let's start writing some jQuery code. And the first thing we're going to learn how to do is how to select elements. So just like with regular DOM manipulation or vanilla JS, we need to select things and then manipulate. I know I'm a bit of a broken record there, but it is a really important process. Select and then change things. This video is going to be mainly focused on selecting elements with jQuery. So two main objectives here. The first one is learning how to select elements with the $sign function, and then also using the .css method to style elements. So we're not just going to select things and just print them out, but to make it more visual, we'll select them and then change their background color. In jQuery, we can select everything that we want using just one function, the $sign. So unlike vanilla JS, where we have document.getElementById, query selector all, get elements by class name, get elements by tag name, there's so many different ways of selecting. The $sign in jQuery will replace all of them. It basically works like query selector all, in that we give it a CSS style selector, and then jQuery returns all the matching elements that match the selector that we give it. So I have an example here. If we wanted to select all of the image tags on a page, it just looks like this. If we wanted to select all the elements with class of sale, we do .sale. Remember, this is CSS style selectors. So for an ID, we need the octothorpe. For a class, we need the dot. And we can also do some more advanced things like this, selecting all anchor tags that are inside of list elements. So I'll do a quick demo here of how this works. So I have our jQuery demo HTML page set up where I have the CDN included. And it doesn't matter if we use a CDN or if you want to use the downloaded copy, it will work the same way. So we need that script here. And then we need some content to play with. So I'll keep the H1 as jQuery demo. I'll change these LIs to make them a bit more unique. So I'll fill it with some of my favorite animals. So N is for Newt, my 5-year-old self's favorite part of the animal alphabet song. We'll add in another one of my favorites, howler monkey, and then lastly, the pine marten. And if you've never seen the pine marten, they are an equally adorable and terrifying animal. As you can see, pretty adorable here. But if you take a look at them in action, they're crazy predators and pretty scary. Okay, so some of my favorite animals in a list. We'll save, and let's open this up now. Make sure we're in the right directory, jQuery demo.html. And what I'll do is move this out in its own window, and we'll just go in the console, make the font size a little bigger, and let's use jQuery to select some of these things. So remember, $sign is a function. And if I just type $sign on its own without the parentheses, that's just like me typing alert without parentheses or console.log without the parentheses. It doesn't really do anything except tell me, yeah, I know about that code, but it doesn't actually execute it. Let's begin by selecting the only H1 on the page. To do that, we can use $sign, and the CSS selector to select H1s is just H1. And we hit enter. You can see it returns the jQuery demo H1. So also notice that it's inside of a list. So unlike query selector, where it returns the first instance, the $sign selector for jQuery will return a list even if there's only one item, which is actually useful, and we'll see that in a little bit. So let's try selecting all the LIs now. So we can do something like $sign LI, and we get 3 LIs just like that. We can also select the body by typing body. And to make things a little more interesting, let's go back to our HTML and add in an ID to pine marten. We'll call it adorable as the ID. And then we can also, on our howler monkey, we'll add an A tag, howler monkey, and it will just go to monkey.com. And this will just be monkey.com. And if we refresh, if I want to select that link, I would use $sign, and I could just do anchor tag, and that will give it to me. I could also say anchor tag inside of an LI. I could also, if I really wanted to, say only the anchor tags inside of LIs that are inside of a UL. And in all cases, so far, those are identical. But if I add another anchor tag just at the bottom of the page, google.com, and I refresh, and now I do my $sign anchor tag, I get both anchor tags. If I do $UL with an li, with an anchor tag inside of that, it only gives me this anchor tag. And I could have just shortened it to this here. And there we go. To select the item with the ID adorable, it works just like query selector all or query selector or CSS for that matter, where I need the octothorpe hash symbol plus the ID name adorable. And that gives me the Pine Marten li. So we've seen how we select, and it's not very exciting just to print things out to the console or just to see them returned here. What I actually want to do is introduce one method. We're going to see a lot more methods in the next few videos, but I'm going to show one right now that will help us make things visual and help us alter the styling. So that method is called .css. And the way that it works is we type a selector, $ and some selector, and then we can add .css on the end of that and pass it in some properties and values to change. So here's an example. I'm selecting something with the ID of special, and then I'm running .css on it and changing the border to be 2 pixel solid red. So let me demonstrate that. Let's do it to the H1. So I select $H1 .css, just like this. And then inside of here, let's change the color to be yellow. Just like that. And I hit enter, and you can see it changes to be yellow, which is awesome. So it's always good to keep in mind how you would do this without jQuery. So we would do something like document.get, and let's do document.querySelector h1 dot, and we don't have .css, so we need to do .style .color equals, and let's change it to orange. And there we go, we changed it to orange. But this line right here is actually a lot more powerful and can do a lot more than we can do with this single line here. So let's suppose that I wanted to change multiple styles about this H1. I wanted to change the color and the background color and the border. What I can do is define my styles in an object and pass an object in. So I don't have to just do a string, border, comma, the value for border. I can define an object with multiple properties, multiple key value pairs, and pass that in, and they will all be applied. So let's do that now. Let's define var styles, and we don't have to make a separate object. I'll show you that. And inside of here, we'll say color should be red, background should be pink, and we'll do border should be 2 pixels solid purple. Just like that. And if we hit enter, we now have our styles object. And again, that can be called anything. And then what we'll do is select the H1. So $H1 again, .css, and we just pass in our styles object. And all of those styles are applied. So to do that without jQuery would require us to do 3 separate lines. We'd need to do document.querySelector h1 .style .color is equal to red, and then .style .background is equal to pink, and then .style .border is equal to 2 pixel solid purple. Hopefully you can see already that with just a few lines, jQuery has already proven to be pretty powerful. And while we can do everything without it, it's definitely saving us some time and making our code cleaner. There's another feature of the .css method that makes it even more useful that I'll show now. What we can do is actually style multiple elements at once. Rather than just selecting the first H1 and making it yellow, we could select all H1s or all LIs, and we just need one line to do that. So I'll show you that now. Let's make all the LIs blue. So to do that, I need to select LIs, so just LI like that. And if I hit enter, you'll see that it gives me the 3 LIs. And then I need to chain on .css, and I'll just give it a single property, color, and change it to be blue. Just like that. And I'll hit enter, and notice this one line changes all 3 LIs. So definitely very powerful. All we do is select with our selector $li, and that gives us 3 LIs. And by doing .css on an array here of LIs, this list of LIs, it actually will make them all blue, and we don't even have to manually loop through like we would without jQuery. So just to remind you, if I want to change all of them to be green without jQuery, I first need to select all of them, So var allies equals document.querySelectorAll, pass in the string li, and then I need to loop through. So for var I equals 0, I is less than li's.length, I++. And then inside the loop, we need to do li's i.style.color equals, and we'll do green, just like that, and we'll hit enter, and you can see they all change to green. So again, it's doable without jQuery, but it's significantly more code. We need to select them all first, and even just selecting them is painful. This is a lot longer than just $. And then we also need to loop through manually with a for loop or a while loop, and then change each one individually, and then we're done. With jQuery though, all we had to do to change them back to blue is select all li's, .css, and then pass in our property, which is blue, color blue. I'll demonstrate a few more examples here. Let's select all anchor tags, just like this, a tag.css, and we'll make their font size bigger. So font size, and it will be 40 pixels. And there we go, we get big links. I'll also show that we can define an object full of styles like we did earlier, and we can use that to style multiple elements, not just one. So we'll select all the li's and style them together. And rather than just doing .css and passing in a string like color, we'll give it an object and just define it in place here. Whoops. And we'll add in some space here to type. And the first thing we'll do is change the font size of all of them. So in CSS, the font size is font dash size or hyphen size. In JavaScript and in jQuery, we have to use camel case. So font size, no space or no dash, but we uppercase S. Remember, that's camel case. And we'll make them 10, let's do, 10 pixels. And then we'll add in a border. And this one will be 3 pixel dashed purple. Those dashed borders are always stunning. And then lastly, we'll add in a background color. Background, and let's just make up our own RGB color. So RGB, and we'll do RGBA actually. And the first one, red, we'll do 89 red, 45 green, 20 blue, and then 0.5 alpha, which is the opacity or transparency channel. And if we hit enter, you can see that all of those are applied at once. So our font size shrank, we got 10 pixels. We have these stunning borders around the li's that are 3 pixels dashed purple. And then we have the background color, which is whatever this color turned out to be. It looks like sort of a light brownish color. All right, so hopefully you can see from that quick demonstration just two different things that we're doing. Selecting with $, and that on its own is incredibly powerful. It basically works like query selector and query selector all combined, and it's a much shorter and easier to write syntax. And then there's the CSS method, which is also extremely powerful because we can change individual properties like we did here, but we can also mass assign CSS properties like we did right here, where we pass in an object full of key value pairs. And probably the most important part of all of this is that when I select a collection, like all li's, like I did right here, I don't have to manually loop through and apply something individually, like I did up here, where we had to loop through all the li's and change their color one at a time. With jQuery, if I have a collection of elements, it automatically loops over that and applies .css to every single one. So it's extremely powerful. And that's why, as a side note, that's why it always returns an array here. Even if I just have one element with the ID adorable, it always returns it in a list because all the logic behind the scenes involves looping over that list. So it will loop over this, and it just happens that there's one item here, so it doesn't really loop, it just goes over one time. All right, hopefully you enjoyed that and are starting to see the power of jQuery.